Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. Happy Tuesday. And okay, welcome. So people will be filing in as time goes on. That's totally fine. Thank you for being here. My name is Erin Navarro. My pronouns are she and her, and I'm the Senior Coordinator of Learning and Resources here at Volunteer Alberta. And I will be facilitating the webinar for today. In part, we have some guest speakers as well. So welcome to our third and our last webinar in our current webinar series, which has been great. Thank you to everyone who has been joining us for that. Today we are presenting on engaging newcomers, welcoming newcomers to participate in volunteerism. So our previous webinars were volunteer rights, what volunteers and board members need to know, and a goals-based approach to volunteer screening, how to nourish relationships and trust in volunteer programming. So for everyone who is registered, there will be a follow-up email sent tomorrow with all of the previous webinars, all of the resources that are mentioned throughout this webinar, as well as the recording sent to all of the participants. So again, thank you for joining. If you are just joining us right now, and we will get started. So one of the things that we like to do here at Volunteer Alberta, just to embrace human connection, is to do a check-in question. And I also think that webinars are sometimes too serious, so we always like to sometimes throw a fun one in there. So you're welcome to type into the chat your name. My name is Erin, in case you're just joining. Your pronouns, my pronouns are she and her, which organization you're representing. And since it is nearing springtime and there will be baby animals being born, what animal do you think is cutest as a baby? So I think bear cubs are the cutest, and I have the proof right there. So you're welcome to enter as much or as little answers that you have into the chat. Just a few housekeeping notes while you are typing. I'm seeing meerkats, I'm seeing kittens. They're all pretty cute. It's kind of hard to pick. But we do ask that you remain muted throughout the slides portion of this presentation. So thank you for remaining on mute. And once we go through the slides, we will stop the recording and then have a conversation, question, answer, discussion time at the end. But if you do have questions or any technical difficulties throughout the presentation portion, you are welcome to type them into the chat, and my colleague Graham will be keeping an eye out for those. And if you do need to reach out about further technical difficulties, again, you're welcome to email the screening email at screening@volunteeralberta.ab.ca. So we will be keeping an eye out for those and address any questions that aren't answered during the end. All right, so as is our practice at Volunteer Alberta, we'd also like to start with a land affirmation. So Volunteer Alberta's main office is situated on Treaty 6 territory, specifically Amiskwichi-Wiscahegan, as it is referred to by the Plains Cree peoples, among other Indigenous names, and the homeland of the Métis Nation. Our staff, our board, and our work reach across Treaties 4, 6, 7, 8, and 10. We also affirm that the land we call Alberta is the traditional and ancestral territory, as well as present-day homes of many nations, including the Blackfoot Confederacy, the Kainai, Piikani, and Siksika, the Cree, Dene, Saulteaux, Nakota Sioux, Stoney Nakoda, the Tsuut'ina Nation, and the Métis people of Alberta, which includes the Métis settlements in the 22 districts of the Métis Nation of Alberta. And since time immemorial, First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples have cared for these lands, and they continue to do so today. Volunteer Alberta identifies and affirms the historical and current relationships of these nations to the land as an act of reconciliation, and with the awareness that acknowledging, recognizing, or affirming these facts is a small step, and it is not enough. So we here at VA are committed to reflecting on, critiquing, and changing our ways of knowing, being, and doing in order to start supporting and concretely contributing to reconciliation and Indigenous resurgence in ways we have not yet done. I am joining you today from Treaty 7 territory, and as nonprofits and volunteer engaging organizations in Alberta, And in the spirit of reconciliation, we have a responsibility to consider how our organizations can contribute to inclusive, accessible, and equitable volunteer programming. So before we get started, one of the frameworks, foundational kind of ideas that that have been guiding this webinar series, and also how we view volunteer screening, is this notion of relationship-based screening. And we define that as screening practices that emphasize human connection, empathy, and mutual understanding. Relationship-based screening goes beyond collecting personal documents, as it welcomes volunteers to participate and be equal players in the volunteer screening process, while organizations create safe and meaningful volunteer programming to promote volunteerism. So this has been guiding us through this webinar series and in our understanding as we engage with different organizations and talk to you about different ways to do volunteer screening. But the key phrase here is safe and meaningful volunteer programming. And there are potentially endless ways to get to this point, which can make it quite overwhelming to start or to review a volunteer program that you're already working with. But how we move and how we make it to safe and meaningful is going to be just as important. So that's why these volunteer programs must be warm, welcoming, and with that emphasis on empathy and connection. And so with this framework as our guide, that also means that you can work with your community to make a unique contextualized volunteer program that reflects the volunteers' needs, the community's needs. And as we talk about engaging newcomers today, if you're working with newcomers, their needs as well. So how your organization and the people within it embodies and creates the space for mutuality, reciprocity, and belonging is foundational. And it's just as important as where we want to get to. So the overview of today, we're starting to hear from Immigrant Services Calgary, from Prachi, who's the volunteer services lead. We are very excited to have you here, and I've really been looking forward to learning more about your work and what you're seeing. And then we get to move back to one of our VA team members, Daryl, who is the research and knowledge mobilization lead, to present on some research findings that as they relate to engaging newcomers. And then we will stop the recording after the conclusion there and move into our question and discussion time. So if you've been a part of another webinar in the last few months, this is the same structure, but we have a couple of guest speakers today. So I'm really looking forward to hearing from you both. Before we get started with Prachi, I just want to give a quick introduction to Immigrant Services Calgary. So for over 40 years, Immigrant Services Calgary has been an integral part of the community, working to make a meaningful difference in the lives of newcomers. And through ISC's work, they ensure families and individuals have the support they need to successfully begin a new chapter of their lives in Canada. ISC continually innovates in their work, reimagining and transforming the newcomer experience to make it easier for clients to access the support they need to thrive. So ISC collaborates with partner agencies, governments, organizations, and community advocates to help immigrants and refugees build thriving lives in their communities. And with that, I will hand it over to Prachi.
Thank you so much, Erin. Hi, everyone. I am Prachi, lead for volunteer services at ISC. I've been at ISC for almost 1 year now and have just recently joined the volunteer services team. We are in the midst of hiring a coordinator for our volunteer department, so that will bring our small but mighty team to 2 people. So today we'll discuss about ISC's volunteer program, the perks of volunteering here, best practices, and some success stories too. So let's begin with the introduction about ISC. So since 1977, Immigrant Services Calgary built a stronger community by supporting newcomers with employment skills training, job searches, and connection to potential employers, English language testing and referrals to language classes, family support to help children, youth, parents, and seniors flourish and build a sense of belonging in their new homeland, legal and tax advice offered through free clinics to newcomers living on a low income, translation and interpretation services in over 85 languages, and much more. So, with a vision to unleash the economic, social, and civic potentials of clients, our mission is to connect newcomers to the right services at the right agency every time. Our core values anchor everything we do at ISC. We are forward thinking, adaptable, and optimistic. We value accountability, collaboration, and impactfulness. We act with integrity and treat people with respect. We have helped more than 152,787 to be precise, newcomers to build thriving lives in Calgary. So, talking about who is a volunteer, a person who chooses to give a portion of their time, their talent, and energy in recognition of a need without concern for compensation. So, what does volunteering in Canada looks like? Over 70%, 71% of Calgarians volunteer on average 15 hours per month. There are over 5,000 nonprofit organizations in Calgary area, most of which use volunteers. December 5th is the International Volunteering Day designated by the United Nations on December 17th, 1985. Every April, Volunteer Canada leads us in celebrating National Volunteer Week. So, engaging newcomers in work marks a significant transformation within the community, leveraging their rich knowledge and unique perspective to enhance on community initiatives. Recognizing the challenges faced by newcomers, particularly language barriers and cultural differences, we are committed to addressing these concerns. To facilitate integration, we connect our volunteers with different programs within ISC, implementing mentorship program and providing language support. This approach aims to cultivate a welcoming environment for newcomers. Our volunteer opportunities are designed to be flexible, ensuring that newcomers can contribute in a way that suits their schedule and interest, and orientations are in place to help them integrate in our activities. Can we move to the next slide, please? So let's talk about what are the benefits of volunteering. There's a saying, life and love aren't about what you gain, they are about what you give. So, giving back to the community, one of the apparent and rewarding benefits of volunteering is impacting people's life and the broader community. By giving our time, skills, and resources to help others, we can contribute to positive change in our communities and beyond. If you volunteer for a cause related to your current or future career, you can build upon your existing skill set to gain more valuable experience. For example, volunteering as an assistant at a blood drive or helping a nonprofit grow its social media presence can carry over to careers where these skills are used. Volunteering is, again, one easy way to expand your horizon and make new friends you might never have met otherwise. Right. So it provides a platform to connect with others passionate about making a difference in the world, fostering a sense of belonging. It is an excellent way to meet people and learn new languages, as you are more likely to encounter individuals who share the same interests and values as you. Making new friends is easier when you are in a group working towards one common goal. Ultimately, volunteering can expose you to new experiences and skill set you can build on throughout your life. So, whether developing leadership skills by organizing events, improving communication skills by working with diverse group of people, or learning technical skills by assisting in a project or volunteering, offer a unique opportunity to acquire knowledge and expertise while positively impacting the world. We all want to feel that we are living our lives in a way that matters. So, why not experience that extraordinary feeling by giving your time to a worthy cause? So, now we'll talk about what are the benefits of volunteering at ISC. So, volunteering benefits newcomers by enhancing their employability. Those searching for job can add volunteer experience in their resume, which counts as Canadian work experience. It can also help you bridge gap in your work history while you look for a job. As a volunteer, you can improve your English, French, and myriad of other language skills. We have a diverse workforce with many uh, cultures from around the world. Regular interaction with native speakers can enhance your fluency and confidence in language speaking. Again, you can choose how, when, and where to devote your time as a volunteer for a worthy cause. As we have a lot of volunteering opportunities internally and outside of ISC with our partners, this can help in build and share your skills and knowledge across the departments or fields you choose to volunteer in. Building a sense of community in Calgary. So, as a newcomer in a foreign land, away from your family and friends, it is easy to feel isolated. Volunteering can help you involve with the community and allow you to give back to the Canadian community that has welcomed you as a newcomer. By offering your time and skills to local organizations, you can make a positive impact on individuals and communities in need. This sense can contribute to be both fulfilling and rewarding. Lastly, again, this is really important. You can also maintain your volunteer hours, and we will provide reference letters which can be useful in the job applications. Now, moving on to the volunteer management best practices, just like how businesses need to engage their employees, how a volunteer organization treats, involves, and motivates its volunteer base is really crucial. So let's talk about the best practices which we follow at ISC for volunteer engagement. Imagine yourself in volunteer shoes, who is entering a new organization with only vague idea behind the meaning of their work, what it's for, and why they have to do it. It's difficult, right? So creating clear written volunteer roles with a title that includes stated priorities and responsibilities, structures their volunteer hours, and immediately grounds their work. We have a robust onboarding program which includes thorough recruitment with a comprehensive orientation process. Volunteer orientation includes online training and an overview of organization, accompanied by a volunteer operation manual that outlines volunteer procedures. So we also give building tours, introduce volunteers to our staff, and explain our mission and values, just to all to equip the volunteer, make them feel comfortable, and set them for success. Using volunteer management tools makes coordinating, communicating, and working with volunteers far easier. So the best of this program offers time-saving portals and features, which is beneficial to both the volunteer managers and the volunteers themselves. So managers can review volunteer hours and project data, while volunteers can set their own hours and create their own task trackers. That's the reason the use of up-to-date technology allows responses to volunteer inquiries quickly. With the right technology, you can answer questions, relay documents, send emails, and create and correct schedules effectively. Volunteer appreciation and events. So at ISC, volunteer recognition is at the utmost importance. We show our appreciation to volunteers through various events, a volunteer of the month posted on our website, company swags, thank you notes, and celebrating volunteer appreciation week. We regularly share stories and examples of how volunteer efforts contribute to the organization's mission, emphasizing the impact of their work. Moving on to what are the best practices which we follow at ISC for volunteer retention. We treat our volunteers as our own. We treat them as our staff who are part of ISC. That means breaks every 3 to 4 hours, time off for lunch, free coffee and snacks, access to computers and role relevant equipments, and more. So together, these efforts help volunteers develop strong cognitive, social, and emotional connection to their work as well as the organization. We share internal job postings with our volunteers as well. We use ISC's value as well as our best judgment to offer meaningful volunteer recognition and acknowledgement and show gratitude to the volunteers for their time. Inviting volunteers to provide feedback regarding the work they do shows attention, courteousness, and care beyond a status quo volunteer experience. Another very important practice for volunteer retention is to meet volunteers, connect with them, understand their needs, and match their skills with opportunities. We believe volunteer feedback is as important as any employee feedback for organizations' overall growth. And lastly, formal and informal volunteer recognition remains a top volunteer management best practice. Regardless of your organization's size, budget, or volunteer roll number, it should be a priority to thank individuals who use their free time to serve you. Can we move to the next slide, please? Yeah. So in 2023, we successfully provided our volunteers with 52 internal volunteering opportunities in various cross departments, naming a few as fitness class facilitator, tax clinic, event setup and support, interpretation and translation, client care representative, receptionist, and admin support. And and 29 external opportunities with our external partners. Can we move to the next slide, please? Yeah, so 29 external opportunities with our external partners, naming homework club support, community event support, charity casino support, photography support, Ukrainian job bank admin support, and many more. Moving on to volunteer feedback. So volunteer feedback is a great way to measure how impactful your volunteer program is. They can help you understand how satisfied, engaged, and successful your volunteers are so you can make improvements. So with a volunteer survey done in past at ISC, here is what we have learned about the tangible impact of our volunteer initiatives. Improve services such as education, health, social services help to support the quality of life in a community. Volunteer provides a sense of fulfillment, belonging, and meaning, making a positive impact on others and our communities lead to a greater sense of satisfaction and purpose. And newcomers have experienced personal transformation through their contribution in the community, having their skills enhanced and building experience for career development. So again, here are a few of the success stories from ISC. 10 of our ISC volunteers were hired internally, and 2 of our ISC volunteers are hired externally with our partners. And these are, again, few stories, success stories from our volunteers. So Titiana, she started volunteering with ISC in May 2023, and she started volunteering for a variety of roles, which included reception, where she helped the clients navigate their way through the integration process and translation services. And she has devoted 150 hours of 150 hours in volunteering. And we also have Shuruk, who started volunteering with us in March 2022, where she dedicated her full time volunteering with us in interpretation and translation center, where she took administrative responsibilities to support our clients with translation and interpretation needs. And her hard work was noticed by all, and she was encouraged to apply for a permanent position at ISC, and she was a successful candidate, and she has devoted 260 volunteer hours to ISC. We would want to extend our thanks to our funders, IRCC, Government of Alberta, and FCSS. Thank you so much. If you have any queries, you can contact us at volunteer@immigrantservicescalgary.ca. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Prachi. I really appreciate the emphasis you had on feedback, and I think it reflects that relationship aspect, and it's one way to relationship with volunteers is just to hear what they have to say. And I also appreciate what you said about the success stories. Again, so important to celebrate too, because sometimes we forget. So I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. So now we get to move on to hearing from Daryl, who is our Research and Knowledge Mobilization Lead. And with that, I will pass it over to Daryl.
Thank you, Erin. Hello, everybody. Sorry, I don't know what's going on. I think my throat is a little dry, so I'm struggling with losing my voice a little bit, so please be patient with me. Yeah, so I want to say, first of all, thank you, Prachi and IC for that presentation. It was extremely insightful for me, and I think I hope you'll find that what I'll be speaking on today will actually complement and affirm a lot of the work that you folks do, particularly with the best practices that you identified around how to best engage newcomers, which obviously is a very natural practice to see folks. Yeah, so I guess I can do a really quick intro. Actually, let's go back to that last slide, Darren. Sorry. So as Darren mentioned, my name is Daryl De Dios, and I'm the lead of research and knowledge mobilization at VEA. So I either lead or am otherwise pretty involved in our research and learning initiatives. My work specifically involves research development, data collection and analysis, and mobilizing the learnings we gather. Similar to what I'm intending on doing here. So just to say a little bit about what Volunteer Alberta is trying to do around research. Currently, VA is in a place where we want to gain deep insight and understanding into what volunteerism looks like today at different levels and in different contexts. So right now, we're engaging in research to explore what volunteer participation looks like nationally. And we're also in the process of conducting deep qualitative research with various communities in Alberta to better understand how people are getting involved with civic engagement and volunteerism. So if you'd like, we'll stay posted and updated on what those research initiatives will eventually turn into. But the work that I'll be speaking on today is another branch of our broader research goals. So in addition to my work in research and knowledge mobilization, I'm also very involved in our work that relates to inclusion, diversity, equity, accessibility, and social justice, ideas for short. And on that front, something that we wanted to explore more closely are the experiences that newcomers have with volunteerism. Specifically, we want to, of course, zoom in on the experiences of newcomers in Alberta. So as you see here, our research question is what factors contribute to the sustainability of volunteerism among newcomers in Alberta? So we're essentially trying to understand the various factors that contribute to ensuring that newcomers participate in volunteer activities over time. So this would involve examining the motivators, challenges, support systems, and other variables that influence their sustained engagement and volunteering efforts. We hope to better learn the primary motivations that newcomers have to engage in volunteerism, the types of volunteer activities that they typically participate in, but then also the most common barriers or challenges that they face when considering or participating in volunteer activities. And then also much more practically, we want to know and hopefully can further unpack through this research. What can organizations do to support newcomer volunteers and staying engaged, and what types of support or resources would be most helpful in newcomers overcoming common barriers and challenges. And again, ISC has already shown a really great example of what that can look like. But digging into our work, next slide, please. So how we've started off is essentially we've conducted an initial exploratory survey earlier this year. So overall, we actually had over 90 respondents, but only 33 were chosen for analysis and some summary today, given the number of completed surveys and also the number of respondents who identified as newcomers based on Statistic Canada's definition of a newcomer as having lived in Canada for up to 5 years. So I know this definition is contested, and it is something that we'll revisit and unpack more for future research. But just to stick to convention for now, we chose responses from folks who have been in Canada for less than 5 years. And although we can't completely generalize this data, as I hope to show, it does give insight into the themes that we can further examine and dive deeper into. And I'll say now research is ongoing in this field, which I'll explain more later on. But our main curiosities for this survey were to get an initial sense of the motivations that newcomers and at least all respondents had to volunteer, and also the reasons for why they might not volunteer, and also where and how they've volunteered. So just to give a brief overview of our respondents in the next slide here. So 64% have lived in Canada for less than 1 year, and 36% have lived in Canada for 1 to 3 years. So again, capturing that definition that we're working with of newcomers as folks who've lived here for less than 5 years. 82% of these respondents have volunteered before coming to Canada, and 94% have volunteered in the past 12 months. This was an interesting figure for us to actually keep track of, because we wanted to know if the fact that people have been volunteering before coming to Canada is a factor, or is correlated to folks wanting to volunteer here when they come to Canada. And so far, what we're finding is that there is a link, which you'll kind of see a little bit more on. But for folks who have been volunteering in the past 12 months with our respondents, 50% would consider themselves active volunteers since coming to Canada. So I think this is actually a really good group to try and unpack some of those themes that we're hoping to explore further. So yeah, continue with the next slide, please. So just to give you, again, a better sense, to zoom in a little bit more of how frequently and how active are these volunteers that we'll be speaking on. So about 35% volunteer at least once a week, and I think it was 22% that volunteer at least once a month. So I would say fairly frequently, over 50% volunteer at least every month. So yes, so next slide. So we also, of course, as I mentioned, we want to know where people are typically spending their time when they're volunteering. So based on what we found, the top 3 areas that people are volunteering in is human services, which we've defined as volunteering in places like hospitals, food banks, seniors' homes, and shelters. Cultural, which we've defined as church groups, cultural community groups, and festivals, and then educational, so schools, reading programs, people volunteering to provide mentorship through tutoring programs and libraries. And then you can see the distribution here as well. Nope, sorry, yeah, that's fine. In terms of the kinds of things that people are actually doing, the activities that people are participating in when they volunteer. These are the top 5 things that people reported that they did. So they typically organize, coordinate, or supervise events. They assist with office work and administrative duties, or they assist with data entry and research work. As you saw, also they can teach or mentor, or they provide healthcare support. So as you can start to see with these roles and these activities, they're typically skilled volunteering activities that these newcomers have engaged in. So of course, we want to learn more about people's motivations. We asked them, why do they typically volunteer? So I'm not gonna dive into the numbers too much here. I have another slide that'll do that, but and you folks will have access to this, so you can look at it on your own time as well. But essentially, we just gave folks, a list of things that are typical motivations for why people volunteer, and then we got them to select the different reasons that they had for why they volunteered. And so in the next slide, you'll see that these are the top 8. So the top one is that folks wanted to volunteer or volunteered to use their skills and experience. Of course, there's qualitative things that we can ask about this, because this doesn't necessarily indicate if people wanted to volunteer to use their skills for to increase their likelihood of finding work, or if they just had skills that they wanted to use to support whatever cause they were volunteering for. Something that I can say is that these reasons kind of range under 3 themes. So there's the themes around personal benefit, like folks wanting to use their skills and experience to explore their interests, to improve their job opportunities. There's also more social reasons for why they volunteer, to better integrate into Canadian society, for example, to meet new people, and then altruistic reasons of them wanting to contribute to their community. And for me, it was really interesting seeing the distribution of how much, just according to these numbers, people lean into the social aspects of why they volunteer. And of course, these reasons might overlap. People might have all of these reasons or a few of these reasons for why they volunteer. Again, something that I also want to highlight was number 8, that folks indicating that they volunteered actively before coming to Canada, and that was a motivation for them. Okay, so next slide. So we also asked why folks might choose not to volunteer. So something that I can say about this is, yeah, we focus largely on people's reasons and motivation and justifications for why they might not volunteer. So this is more focused on individual perception rather than necessarily social barriers and social restrictions, like screening practices and all these things that might stop them from wanting to volunteer. So if we go on to the next slide, what I think these statements show, or the numbers show around here, is that a lot of the reasons that people had for not wanting to volunteer is related to their capacity. We also asked questions of folks, did they decline a volunteering opportunity, or did they not want to volunteer because of a past challenging experience? That was actually a pretty low metric. And then also language barrier was interestingly also a low metric. A lot of the reasons that people identified was related to them not having enough time. They had family needs to attend to, the financial costs of volunteering, or they didn't know how to get more involved. Again, of course, the numbers might not show, why this is the case. Folks might not want to disclose if they did have a challenging experience. Maybe they didn't want to disclose that as a reason for why they might not volunteer. But regardless, I think this is still pretty telling. That capacity is a factor for why newcomers might second guess or think about why they might not want to volunteer. Okay. So another metric that I wanted to talk about and to show here, because I thought it was interesting, again, going back to this question of how do we best engage newcomers, based on what our respondents said. And my assumption coming in was that newcomers would largely probably learn about these opportunities through their networks, through people that they know. And that's kind of shown here, where 37% say that they learned about opportunities by attending a meeting or activity, and then also word of mouth, which of course might overlap. But it was actually an interesting number seeing that newcomers also found these opportunities through online sources, which to me would say that they're actively looking for these opportunities, that they're trying to, they're putting the effort on their own to see what opportunities are out there so that they can volunteer. And again, that brings up the question of, for organizations that are looking for newcomers or are engaging newcomers, how can you create volunteer opportunities that allow people to network, but then also, how are you promoting or communicating your the volunteer roles or opportunities that you're developing. And so there's three themes that I really wanted to highlight, at least for this initial conversation around the research. So like I mentioned, there are multiple reasons for why newcomers might be motivated to volunteer. So there are personal, altruistic, and social reasons that they've indicated for why they volunteer. And I think what can come from this as a reflective question for us and for the organizations is how might we best understand our volunteers' motivations, and how might we create roles that effectively motivate newcomers to volunteer. So Prachi talked a lot about the importance of looking for feedback and having that dialogue with their volunteers to make sure that the roles that they're developing are advantages or are things that volunteers want to be a part of. And I think that, again, I want to affirm that as a really good practice. Our second theme is, so newcomers might largely choose not to volunteer because of personal capacity. And as I mentioned, as we continue with this research from VA side, there does need to be more research that needs to be done on systemic barriers, including screening practices, policies, and volunteering requirements, to what extent that actually these things hold as barriers for newcomers. But our third theme, so going back to this notion of capacity, oh, sorry, oh, this is not what I thought it'd be. But I guess, so what I'll speak on, can we go back to Kimthi too? Sorry, the point here is when we're trying to engage newcomers, how can we provide supports that might help with those capacity issues? Sorry, thank you. And again, newcomers are likely to learn about volunteering opportunities through their networks and also through their own research online. So what might be some good practices for enhancing communication channels? So I did want to identify some insight for organizations just based on some of these trends and then these themes that have come up, which again, I think really complement what ISC has talked about already. But for organizations, think about how you can create volunteer roles that give newcomers opportunities for growth and social belonging. Are they able to use or grow their skills? Are their experiences professionally transferable? Do these roles allow for social engagement and networking? Are newcomers able to learn more about their communities through these opportunities? And then do you have feedback or communication channels that allow you to learn from newcomers? Again, is there that space for dialogue to help you improve your volunteer roles? And then, yeah, what kinds of supports are available? Can your organization provide different forms of capacity support, such as honoraria, childcare, transportation? Of course, this will also depend on the capacity of organizations themselves, but these are things to consider. And then how are you engaging and communicating with newcomers? Is information about your organization easily accessible? Are social events and opportunities you hold inclusive towards newcomers? And one caveat or thing that I'll say about this is, of course, these just from the themes that we've gathered, these are really important for newcomers, but I think a lot of these are also good practice for engaging volunteers in general. Okay, so what's ahead for the research is just an expanded research plan. So again, the survey was meant to just get us started somewhere. It was meant to be exploratory so that we know what more to dive into. So part of this is in expanding our research methods. So I will be revamping our survey to send another one that I think hopefully will improve based on the learnings that we had with why people might not have completed the initial survey. The things, our identification of newcomers. Maybe we actually want to expand our understanding of newcomers beyond just having been here for 5 years. But these are, things that we'll be grappling with. And then, beyond just reporting on what we learn, we also, Volunteer Alberta wants to build on this practice of putting research and theory into action. So hopefully, or the hope is that we'll be able to develop tools, resources that can be useful to organizations based on the things that we're learning. And of course, we after we've done, the research work, we want to look for different means and channels for mobilizing our learnings. And then I think that's it. I don't actually know what's the next slide.
That's it.
Okay, cool.
Thank you so much, Daryl. I know it's been a journey to collect all those responses, and you put so much time and energy into that. That was really interesting. And it's exciting because I think you're some of the first to hear those results. So that's really cool. So thank you, everyone, for joining along with that. One thing I do want to address before we move into the conclusion, just because I saw it in one of the pre-surveys and I want it to be in the recording in case that individual wasn't able to attend, was a question about volunteers who can't access a vulnerable sector check, which is a type of background check. So one good practice that we do like to talk about is balancing the level of risk that is within a role to the level of screening. And so our previous webinar that you all received on a goals-based approach to volunteer screening, and we also have another presentation called Do I Need a Vulnerable Sector Check, will both address those alternatives and flexible ways to screen volunteers. But we can absolutely talk about this question more if you want to reach out. But one question we can all consider too with this notion of relationship-based screening and all of the insights that Prachi and Daryl had is there other ways to screen and is a VSC even necessary within a certain role? So are there safety measures that you can consider? Are there ways to help with the training? Are there certain roles that you want to make available that don't necessarily need a vulnerable sector check? Awesome questions to consider. So I just wanted to address that before we head to our conclusion. So the volunteer screening program today presented this webinar. You're welcome to look at our page. We do offer the screening development grants, which are a micro grant to assist you in your screening practices. Those will be open to apply for in June. And we also offer the vulnerable sector check fee waiver for all eligible organizations. So you're welcome to check that out. And I will also mention, because I didn't mention at the beginning, VA does not offer any legal advice. So any questions you have that do pertain to legal issues, we do recommend that you take that to an insurance or a legal professional, either your insurance provider or lawyer or another legal professional. So I did want to mention that as well. So now we're at the end of our presentation part of our webinar today. I can't believe the webinar series is over. It's been such a long time in the making and a great ending to that. So we do offer, the volunteer screening program does offer free coaching to nonprofits in Alberta who are interested in learning more about screening. I know that the VA team is also open to answering questions as well. So you're welcome to reach out if you have other things you'd like to talk about or continue this conversation. You can also access our resources on our resources library. Again, I'll be sending all of that. But I will also be following up with all registered attendees with all of the information today and a survey follow-up. So thank you to everyone who filled out the survey to prepare for today. We really appreciate your responses, as it just helps us to create webinars that are helpful to you. There will be a post survey that will be sent out, and this is an opportunity to fill out your information as well if you'd like to partake in ongoing research, as Daryl mentioned, disseminating future surveys, promoting communications about research, or participating in interviews or focus groups. So you're welcome to fill that out and leave your info. But we are also looking for feedback for today to continue to offer these webinars that are helpful for you. So thank you in advance for submitting your feedback. A massive thank you to Prachi and the ISC team for being so generous with your time and wisdom and being flexible and being here today. Thank you to Daryl for also all of your time and energy that you've placed into this presentation. And thank you all for attending today. This webinar series has been a blast. I'm really looking forward to our conversation in a sec after I finish the recording, but just want to say thank you. And if you need to go, I hope you have a wonderful day. So.